Welcome back, brothers and sisters. Today we're going over all my favorite builds and weapon combos for every class on Space Marine 2. We did do a deep dive on a few different streams already for everything, so this will be the streamlined version of all of those with keynotes, and in the future we will do in-depth build guides for each class, and all the builds are also formatted into text guides that will be consistently updated in my Discord first, like all the other builds that we have. We also went and learned about every chapter in the game and found the most thematic and cool build that we could do for everything, while doing a bit of a lore dive to learn about all the different sub-chapters. So we have amazing book recommendations for most things to help you get more immersed in your favorite class in the universe, and we will be recommending some more fun builds alongside the meta stuff with some lore behind it. But if you've used any of my builds in the past, you know they aren't just the most fun, but they're also the most overpowered. So everything you need will be linked down below, and if you enjoy the video, like it, and let me know what you want to see next. For now, though, we're lighting this off with everybody's favorite class, the most overpowered thing you could think of in the game, the Assault class. Well, really, it's just my favorite, and a lot of people have been saying this character is complete garbage. And until you max it out, it absolutely is. But after you finish it off, you get some insane synergies for damage that make your weapons feel powerful. Originally, you would feel like the Power Fist or the Thunderhammer lacked that damage, but with all the different things combined, they feel really good. And you get a ridiculous amount of sustain for you and your team on every gun strike, and your on-demand AoE and single target damage let you control the flow of the game. The main issue is you don't play this character the way you think you should. It's very slow and methodical. It's not that flashy W key adventure you imagined. Everything revolves around heavy attacks and gun strikes, and you can just brawl everything in the worst situations. So to set everything up properly, you need to make sure you have the fencing Thunderhammer with the highest damage heavy bolt pistol. When you're balls deep in melee, you need to make sure you can spam parry for more gun strikes, because even if it doesn't finish the target, you're always going to get an armor back. You can also double tap your gun strike to force the first armor and execution armor, but you need to have good decision making to decide whether you need to execute for the iframe or if it's just better for the fast kill with the second gun strike. This also lets you overheal and stops a lot of the health disparity issues you would normally have. All you need to do is methodically take just even 1 point of damage, just a little sliver of contested HP, and when you gun strike, you're going to almost regenerate to full every single time. This ends up with some of the best armor and health sustain outside of like a Melta gun. So it ends up feeling really powerful, and all of our talents revolve around giving us as much synergy as possible. Our core section focuses on armor regen, which is pretty much the most important talent in the row, secondary damage to help the gun strike out a little bit, and melee damage to hit a few breakpoints. Our team perk ends up giving the entire team 50% gun strike damage, which is the main thing that removes that health disparity, not just for us, but for our team. And this is one of the best team talents in the game, and I think we'll see this shine a lot more when lethal difficulty comes out. For our gear section, it revolves around being able to take any action we need on demand. Jump pack resets whenever there's a horde to clear them out, and the ability to juice our ground and pound really help us out. We also take damage on activation for our signature for some extra damage, but it doesn't really scale the best into ruthless difficulty. I've been playing around with a different build that has aerial grace and commitment. The only problem with this is if you don't have really like basically perfect ping, the dodge window of the jump pack dash is extremely inconsistent, and a lot of the time the iframe on the jump dash is just, it's not good enough to warrant using it over like a spacebar dash, and in real situations it does fall apart quite a bit. So if you are on higher ping, I recommend the first setup, and if you're on a lower ping, the second setup does really well. Now, one thing that Assault suffers from is lack of damage, which is why on our heavy bolt pistol we need to have Death Strike in close combat. These are worded in ways that means your melee weapon also gains benefits from this damage while the pistol is mounted, and because we always have it out, we always get the damage for the hammer. The headshot damage also applies to the gun strike and lets you eat everything in sight. Our Thunderhammer perks are also very straightforward for more damage and faster heavy attacks, with the chance at more contested HP just to help out with a little bit of sustain, and a second attack on our Aftershock, which lets us double bonk and has high stagger, so that lets you take down the ridiculous enemies that usually give you trouble or iframe out of the first explosion. The reason I didn't opt for a second ground pound is because it's the same animation queue time as just a normal heavy attack after your jumping ground pound anyways, and after some testing, the AoE talent seemed almost like it didn't really do anything, or it might be bugged almost, like I'm not really too sure, but I didn't notice the impact of that 50% AoE, and sacrificing the chance at more contested HP really didn't make sense to me. In general, though, I think that this is the flat out strongest assault build setup that you can bring in for team play, even for solo. I've soloed a bunch of runs with this, and It just lets you dive in, create a massive gap behind the enemy waves, and sets up some of the most ridiculous back shots you've ever seen. And if you've watched my tips and tricks video, you know that back shots are the best way to play this game. But a tip I need to bring up is just don't jetpack in front of a bunch of ranged enemies. I know it should have an iframe in PvE, but it doesn't, and then you take back shots, and we don't want that. The Power Fist is also masterful in this department, but it's a little bit more of a support weapon because it's really good at proccing gun strikes for you and your team, and it has a very satisfying combo attack chain where you flow back and forth between light and heavy attacks. It's still not that great, but it's super fun, and it's definitely worth trying out because it does have a fun flow state to it. And if you want to use the bolt pistol, just make sure that you have the retaliation perk because it applies to your entire character. I also use this bolt setup on every single class, so if you see that, the explanation behind that is this perk is really good, and the extra gun strike stuff that we take for it is pretty much the same as the heavy bolt pistol. We also do have my Chainsword set up for everything that doesn't really change either. This will be the same across the board. And my friend Reginald also mains Assault and clearly hates himself as much as I do, but has a great video deep dive on some of the mechanics that I touched on, so make sure you check that out. It's linked down below. And if you wanted to do some fun lore build setups for this, I think Black Templars, Blood Angels, Doom Eagles, and Void Tridents are the perfect picks for you. And an important thing to remember is you can have a massive impact on the game's Assault. It just takes a lot of work and a different mindset from what you think it should do. But when we talked about our new tactical build, it plays the exact power fantasy you think it would. Pure W key momentum that can't be stopped. The grenade launcher Boltgun literally deletes everything from chaff to elites, even bosses. The damage on this thing is just ridiculous. It makes it so that you don't even have to think and you can just win. I know most people were expecting Melta fun, but this is way better across the board and is the technology we were looking for. The real range threats on the map are all shooty boys, so you get the ability to deal with that, and scanning into a grenade is just a one-shot fiesta on basically any Majoris enemies. There's a lot of games we've played with this where we don't even deal melee damage while having this thing equipped, and its sustain is out of control. Our main build goes all in for the magazine and ammo increase so we can hold as many noob tubes as possible, and we just run our standard bolt pistol and chainsword setup alongside that. Our overall perk synergy is to make sure our bolt guns can pierce. This is one of the most important talents in the game for every bolt gun, and most importantly, Emperor's Vengeance lets us fully regen all of our GL ammo on demand, giving us infinite ammo. You can even execute the enemies at range with the normal bolt shots if you wanted to do it that way too, to get your ammo back. And the team perk is just a talent tax because health disparity is a massive problem in this game, and that helps deal with that. Our gear section revolves around melting the entire screen without thinking and creates an area of denial that if anything even enters, it just gets instantly deleted by not just you, but your teammates too. And sometimes we do rotate the first row to vital data if you feel like you need more Minoris damage. Usually you do want to take this if you're boosting people for levels or just playing solo. And after testing everything, I personally think this is the strongest setup in the entire game just for raw killing power and like carry potential and just the ability to spam solo win games. But the most fun build for me is the plasma gun because I think it has a ton of potential in the AoE, health sustain, and boss damage department. Plus, it sounds really cool. The perk build we take in is almost exactly the same outside of the plasma boost in the first row because it lets you breakpoint two-shot Majoris enemies without a scan if you're close enough to them. For some reason, the plasma gun has damage fall-off, which seems really weird, and when I was testing the balanced distribution talent, it didn't hit any breakpoints. It basically just became useless for my overcharged plasma build. When we also took Emperor's Vengeance, we found out that it gave all of our plasma ammo back, so you just end up with an infinite overcharged plasma gun. And our entire plasma build revolves around venting that heat as fast as possible while just slamming those overcharged shots off. The common shots have too much bloom and they aren't really worth using outside of like spitting range even when you tech into them. We also go for a little extra ammo with charge speed and a main focus on just spitting out as much AoE as possible. This is going to be what makes the plasma gun shine more than anything else. This AoE lets you just slam down packs of basically everything while keeping them CC'd even when the scan isn't up. And again, if you're just a little out of range, it's going to take 3 shots to kill Majoris instead of 2. It just lets you flat out one-shot packs of enemies when it is. You also only need the 125% charge speed on shot for it to feel good. The second one felt like kind of a waste, over 10% damage. But one thing to note is enemies will spam iframe no matter what if you're just like outside of a certain distance of them. So after they hop, just wait to blast them. And you'll end up with one of the coolest thematic builds in the game to go hard with. I think the plasma gun is my favorite sounding weapon, and I think it's insanely cool. And overall, the plasma build's just the second most fun build in the game that I play. We also do have a Melta gun build if you just want to W key. It has infinite ammo with a focus on melting the entire screen. This is just a very standard setup across the board. Now, lorefully, a lot of chapters ended up with tactical as their mainstay because it just made sense with their current combat doctrines. So you have a ton of really cool options to just go crazy with and more importantly, have fun with. but not the most fun, because the most fun you could have in this game is the heavy Boltgun build. This is extremely slept on and needs to be literally maxed out to be good, but turns the peak power fantasy of being a turret into reality. The 9 damage and 4 accuracy just let you melt everything even across the map, but relies on some key perks like penetration and mainly the 30% raw damage increase. After doing way too many games with it because I was just having so much fun, I realized that the heat buildup reduction was peak, and once you get comfortable dropping heavy immunity for the second heat buildup, that's where you'll really start popping off. But when you're first getting used to it, just use the heavy immunity because it just rounds the build out to feel really smooth. Now, if you were worried about health regeneration, the heavy bolter can out-sustain pretty much any range damage coming in on you. But if you do need to snap reset, the plasma pistol technology lets you delete a pack of enemies and heal the full in just a snap second. It works the same way in theory as the plasma incinerator does for regen, just by blasting the floor. So we just focus on AoE heat buildup and ammo economy here to make sure that when we need to use it, we can. This is also what we kill Majoris with when they want to step a little too close to the sun, or we overheat our heavy bolter from spamming it too hard. The heavy bolter also has insanely good boss damage and is a weapon you need to stop sleeping on because its fun factor is just maxed out. And our overall build setup is just to give it a little extra ammo sustain. And in our second row, if you take the 20% health, you can heal off of loadout boxes. But if you get to the point where you don't need this anymore, which eventually you will with practice, you want to swap to thermal boost because it affects both the plasma pistol and the heavy bolter, letting you melt everything even harder. And versatility with the plasma pistol in the third row also feels okay, but I just prefer the Iron Halo tech, and 20% range damage reduction is one of the best team perks in the entire game because on tier 4 ruthless difficulty, like, range damage is just cranked to the max. So anytime you get to reduce that is massive for your team. But bonus ammo can be really nice sometimes. It isn't really needed for the most part, but like when you are in random queue, having more ammo can be really good. Now, in our gear section, taking the extra grenades is fine, but the next two are to extend Iron Halo's duration and to make us do more damage while it's on cooldown. The main reason we do this is because the signature skill helps cool off our teammates' ultimates, turning you into a beast mode support with a ludicrous amount of damage output that can be competitive with Melta guns if played correctly. The overall synergy of this build gave me the true class fantasy I wanted from this. It's the first time that I've used a heavy bolter in a game that's felt this good, and like, it's something that I wanted to do on my Ogryn and Darktide so badly but never got to, and I finally have that here. And I hope this lets you enjoy the big bolter too. Again, it needs to be maxed out, but once you get there, it is the most fun you could have in the game, in my opinion. And of course, don't worry, we do have the multi-melt to build because it's actually just the W key meta. You just want to win for free. It has infinite sustain and ammo, and you just get to face roll everything. Perk-wise, we do only rotate the first row over to multi-kill for that infinite ammo sustain. And perk-wise, on our multi-melta, we just go for the most ridiculous amount of damage that we can with as much ammo as we can slam into this thing. The 1 meter is nice to have just in case we take the one with 10 more base ammo, and depending on the map that you play, you can choose between more range and more magazine capacity. Either way, you're going to be using your droidica organ to just like W key roll at everything and blast off on it, so it's not really going to matter. Both these builds work amazing, and I had a few questions about the plasma cannon on stream. I genuinely didn't like it because it felt very clunky and slow to me. I don't like the way that it lobs shots. Even with the overall charge speed increases, I didn't like it anyways. And even after you get that shot charge speed to go faster, I just didn't like it. But lorefully, it does have a setup that does make sense. So if you want to do something cool, that is an option. It's just not for me, unlike Bulwark. That's all for me. I love the idea of a power sword in the shield, and the way you hold the pistol with the shield is peak for me. Our build focuses on supporting the team while being able to deal like really solid sustained damage, melting hordes and elites all the same, but this class isn't about spamming. It's about timing your attacks and waiting for the right opportunity while controlling the flow of the match. We have tons of area denial with our electric aura spam that we just parry and take a step back to let our enemies rot out inside of this electric field, and this is going to be our bread and butter. Talent-wise, we're locking in with as many shock grenades as we can poop out, with a 25% damage increase for all of the enemies that get stuck in our area of control. This also works for your teammates, so anything that's in there is just getting melted, and we also take the contested HP drops 50% slower. I think this should be baseline in the game altogether for everybody, but once you have this talent on your team, every character feels infinitely better to play, and that health disparity issue goes away almost altogether. This is just a god tier team talent because it keeps everyone healthy and synergizes insanely well with our banner. Our teammates will also take less damage and, more importantly, get 100% more contested HP, when we do our banner. So if you drop it while somebody is super low and executing an enemy, it will instantly snap them up to 100% HP. The secret technology for Bulwark to hard carry is communication. If you notice people are just low, prep some executes and banners so everybody can heal up to full. The on-demand team resets are super valuable, and this build hard carries pub lobbies with solid damage output and sustain. Our plasma pistol just has the same setup in theory as before, and you just blast the floor to reset your HP. Our power sword setup, however, is on the speed style because that's personally what I prefer and what a lot of my friends prefer. And if you prefer the heavy style, that's perfectly fine. This is 100% optional. Both work really good, and it just depends on your playstyle. One more thing to note about the power sword is the parry on it lasts around 1.5 seconds, and in that window you can parry more than one attack. If you spam parry, it reduces that window. You also want to make sure you make good use of blocks and shield bashes to keep a good flow going. Mainly when I play this class, I imagine the power sword as the true power fantasy for it, but if you wanted to get into some lore stuff, it has some really cool options, and we'll be getting the Dark Angels cosmetics soon, so you can really go all in on that. And I just finished reading the Knights of Caliban, and that book goes insanely hard, so I'm ridiculously excited for these cosmetics to go out so I can go full RP mode. But you have tons of different build options, tons of cool things you can do with Bulwark. Now, moving on to Sniper, I was a little disappointed that we basically got one weapon choice that feels good with the last Fusel. The Stalker Bolter feels okay, and it's just a better version of the Bolt Sniper rifle, which is just stupid. But it made up for it by being insanely cool. The last Fusel feels awesome. It has big boss damage and basically infinite ammo. Originally, I didn't think I was going to like this character at all, but the more I play it, the more I like it. You do want to play second line for the most part and focus on Majoris enemies. Getting them into execute range for your team is the mainstay and what's going to matter the most, so that way they can brawl in melee without any worries. They take a hit, they can instantly go execute because everything's just prepped and waiting for them. And our last Fusel setup lets us play super safe with massive AoE and tons of extra ammo to play around with. The damage synergies that come from our build also focuses on just popping in and out of stealth just to slam shots off and delete whatever's in front of us with a ton of cooldown reduction. You pretty much get everything with Sniper. It feels really good once you level it up. You get everything going, and it does feel really weak off the rip, though, just as a warning. The team CDR talent is our mainstay and what has the most potential. We also end up with the cheat death just in case, and if you wanted to RP as Raven Guard, then you can take in a really cool Stalker Bolter setup. I think that it's more important to be able to play your favorite class with more than just one weapon, and I really don't like the Bolt Sniper rifle. Now finally we have the Van Gussie. It has quite a few lore builds, but after using some of the carbines, it really left me wondering why some of the weapons in the game just have to be so weak for no reason, to the point that it makes the cool lore build feel kind of bad. And of course that leaves us with the very standard Melta gun build that we've seen a million times basically everywhere before. We just went for max damage, range, like big magazine, and the talent build we have just is essentially all talent taxes in the core area because a lot of these are redundant or just flat out terrible. And the perfect parry window increase is just too good not to take, and it's one of the best feeling perks in the entire game after you get it rocking. Our team perk is just for extra team cooldown reduction because the other two are pretty terrible, and our gear choices are all set up for our grapple to blast off with more damage for Melta fun. That also gets rounded out with the cheat death for the armor reset. I didn't find that the 1% HP, whatever, it's actually 10% on the bottom signature talent, not actually 1%. You use it in game, you can see. The thing that I had happen to me more than anything was that if I was going to die on this class, it was going to be in a snap moment. I was just getting deleted by like range fire and getting instantly killed, and the cheat death basically stops that altogether, and it happens once every 3 minutes because with the Melta gun you can just spam reset your HP to full anyways, so I felt like I didn't need any more sustain, and this ended up being better versus both factions. My friend Thick also has a deep dive video on this, so that's linked down below as well, right beside the guide for how to level up the fastest. And this should be everything you need to help you progress into ruthless difficulty, but there is one thing to keep in mind more than anything else. You have tons of playstyle options and choices to choose from to get your perfect class fantasy. So if you think I should try something cool that you found, let me know down in the comments, and I'll be deep diving every single build and more from what I talked about today in individual videos when I had some more free time. And I also have to genuinely thank all of my channel members for all the extra love and support. You guys have been going ridiculously hard lately. Like, thank you for all the donations, just the kind words, like the membership, everything has been insane. Thank you. Like, just thank you. Like, it's crazy. On the balance feedback we made for Space Marine 2, you guys went insanely hard. Just honestly, again, thank you for all the support all the time. You guys really are insanely generous, and you just let me keep making the videos that I want to do, and I really appreciate that. So I just had to drop this extra thank you in there for you, but that's going to be all for now. I wish you the best of luck out there.